Hello everyone, today I want to show you how to make this Josephine knot wrap bracelet, and this is what mine looks like here. So this is just using the materials that I've chosen. So I've got a nice metallic pink leather cord, and then I've chosen some seed beads in different colours there. But you can really customise it and just use a technique for however you want to. Even use larger beads and maybe use less beads, and obviously the cord you use as well will help determine how it's going to look as well. And this is then what mine looks like on. So you can see it gives a really nice effect with a regular wrap bracelet with beads, but then just breaking up the beaded sections there with those knots all the way around. You can obviously make it however you want to. And then with this one here, I just finished it off using these ribbon ends and then attached a clasp. So this is just a lobster claw clasp and an extender chain. That's just how I've done it. You can also do a regular button and loop closure on yours if you prefer that. It's completely up to you. Then it looks like that. So if you want to learn how to make this bracelet, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to be needing. First of all, we just need some cord. Now I'm using a 1.5mm leather cord, but you can really use many different types and thicknesses of cord as well. So either thinner or thicker, or a completely different type of cord than this. That's completely up to you, and it will give you different looks depending what you choose. And then we're also going to need the beads that we're going to add into the piece. Now I'm using 11 Miyuki seed beads. One colour is in gunmetal and the other colour here is in galvanized blush. That's just what I've chosen to combine with my cord that I thought would go nicely. So you can either use something like this or you can use whatever else you really want to. There's no specific kind of beads that you have to use. So I'm going to be making rows of beads with multiple beads in each row. You could also use less beads, so larger ones for instance, or even all the way down to using a large bead and just use one bead per row, you could say, how you want to add them. That's complete personal preference. And then to add the beads, I'm going to be using this S-lon size D thread, and I've kind of matched the colour the best I can to the cord just to make it blend in nicely. And then I'm going to use my beading needles here with the thread, and I'm using 2 needles for this technique. And then for this piece here, I've chosen to finish it off with my ribbon ends, and then obviously using my findings as well. So lobster claw clasp, extended chain, and then my jump rings to attach it all together. So you can either use them, or you could also finish it off using a regular button and loop closure, how you would do for most wrap bracelets. That's completely up to you. So let's get all our pieces together here, and let's get started. So then we need a length of our leather cord, and what I have is one length here of about 1 meter. And what I'm going to be doing is actually doubling this over when we start working with it. And I've then taken my length of cord here that I've already cut off now, and I've attached this onto my mini macrame board. So I'm just going to be working on this. It has all these notches around the edges, makes it really easy to work with, and also especially on the bottom we're going to keep having to attach these and unattach them to be able to make knots, but then also to make the beaded parts. So it's just much easier to work with. Obviously you can use whatever you have available to you. That's going to work fine. But then what we need to start off doing is I'm going to start making one of the knots, and then I'm going to get into the beaded. I just like kind of making the knot first, because that also guides you on how you need to add in the beads. And you can obviously choose to use other beads, so you'll know the space you have available to you. So what we need to do is start making the knots like I said. And I'm just going to start with my left one here. And what I'm going to do is take the length and fold it back on itself with the tail coming underneath, and then I have a loop like this. So there we go. Just hold it there for now. And then we need to take the other side, and that one goes over the loop, just straight over the top of it there. And then we need to bring it underneath the tail coming down. So lift that up and push it under, just like that. And then it goes over the tail going up. That's also on that side. So over that. And then we need to come in through the loop that we've already created and catch the initial part of the one that we're currently moving around. So I need to come underneath the top part of the loop, but then coming up through the loop, but on the inside you could say, so before this length that comes straight down across the top. So pull it up there, and then I take the end, and we need to go above the top of that comes straight down through the same loop, but just catching that cord here coming over the top of it, and then pull it straight out to the other side. And it's interweaving the cords like this that first of all creates the knot, but then holds the whole thing together as well. And then all you want to do now really is then tighten this up. So first of all I just want to move it a little bit into the kind of position where I want it to sit. I'm going to leave a bit of space up here, so I'm not going to push it all the way up. I want to just have a bit of cord left, so I can then use that if I want to add some beads there at the end. You just want to then take a bit of time here, tighten it up. Just do, you can kind of say one side at a time, and then till you reach the point where you're quite happy with how it looks. So whether you want it kind of loose and open, or whether you prefer it tighter, that's completely up to you really, and your personal preference. But then that's pretty much the knot. So there we go. Just going to tighten that a little bit more, I think. Make sure that both sides get as even as possible. So just like that. And then when we're happy with that, this is now the point where we can move on. So we have the first knot in place. Just want to tighten it just a little bit. And then we have these two lengths, that's the tails that we've been working with. They're coming straight down. And obviously the other ones that we started out, they're going straight up, so opposite directions to each other. And that's exactly what we want, because this is now the space that we're going to fill in with beads. So you just want to choose whatever beads you want to, that's going to fit into this space. You can really choose whatever you want to. So different sizes, shapes, and obviously colours of beads as well. Just know that you have this space. It also depends on what cord you're using. So you might use a thicker or thinner cord than me, and that will then also determine your knot, and again how tight you've made it. So just get the knot to where you want it to be, and then in this position here we then need to start adding in some beads. So to add the beads we then need to cut some thread ready here, and what I have is about a wingspan of my thread, but you can really just use whatever you're comfortable working with. So if it's shorter, that's fine as well. You can also, same thing, if you just run out or say your thread snaps or anything, you can also finish it off and then add in new along the way. You can keep doing that in the sections, it's completely up to you, or weave, continue using the same length and then weave it in through the knots. So really personal preference. But then I've also added my needles, so one on each end of the same thread, and then I put a decent length of tail through, about the same length as well, because you don't want to ideally run out of one side of thread before the other one. And then we're ready to start adding in the beads. So then I'm just going to get a few of my beads ready here, so I just have some to show you. And this is the 11 nose. Like I said, you can use whatever beads you want to. You can really just experiment as well, so whatever's going to fit in this space, whether you want to use multiple beads along or whether you want to use one bead that's big enough. That's completely personal preference. But I'm going to be using these ones here. So what we need to do first of all is attach or add the beads onto our needles and thread. So what I'm going to do is in the pattern, one of my dark ones, and then one of my rose gold, you could say, and then another one of that, so two of the rose gold rather, and then another one of the dark ones. So in this case, with these beads that I'm using, I have 4 beads in total, and I have one dark one, 2 of the metallic in the middle, and then one dark on the end. And they're going to sit just like that and fit perfectly. Then what I need to do is take this needle underneath my cords, leather cord, and you can just let the beads drop down on the thread as well, and then pull it through here. And this is how I'm going to attach the first set of beads and then continue to go as well. And then I'm picking up both of my needles, keep hold of the thread, and then I want to find roughly the middle here. So I want to make sure the beads are going to stay underneath and in the middle of the leather cord, and so I have them roughly in the middle of the thread as well. Because same principle as with the tails, we ideally don't want to run out on one side too soon before the other side. So just try and get all this roughly in the middle of the thread and kind of hold the needles together and then measure it like that. And then if you're happy with that, then I'm going to separate out the thread, and I have one needle to each side here. And for now my thread is coming on both sides underneath the leather cord in the middle. What I'm then going to do is take one needle at a time, just do one side at a time here, and I want to go around and back over the top of the leather on this side and back through the same beads, just like that, all the way through all those beads. I'm just going to hold my finger on there to try and keep everything centered without moving around too much. Pull all this thread through, not too tight, because I'll just pull it out from the other side. The main thing for this obviously is to get the pattern going, but also just to get everything attached so we can then keep going. Then I want to take the needle from the other side that we haven't gone through the beads with yet, this time around. Again, go over the leather on this side and then through the beads again, the exact same way. Just want to get the thread out of the way, there we go. And then again over the leather on the other side as well. Just so we can get both needles and thread in the position here, and we make sure that these beads now then are attached. So pull it through, and then before I pull it all the way tight, I want to just position these right. So I want to push this all the way up as close as I can get underneath that knot that we made initially. So basically the thread on the side here that's looping around the leather is what you want to see about pushing up as close as you can. So tighten it a bit and then just make sure it's pushed all the way up, just like that. So there we go. And now because this is the first set of beads, I always like to go through these a few times. So what I'm going to do is just get my needles underneath the leather cord. Could also do that initially, go under instead of over. Kind of get the hang of that and the rhythm that you prefer to work with as you go. Just to get them in the right position here, take the other one through the middle and down underneath, out to the same side, just like that. And there we go. And now I just want to go through the beads again, like I said, the exact same way. I just like doing this at the beginning when I start out, but also at the end when I finish, because it just gives it that extra bit of security, going through the beads a few times. So do the same thing again, go through them on both sides, and then once you've done that, we're ready to add on the next row of beads. So I'm then ready for the next row of beads here, and also made sure that my thread is coming out underneath the leather cord on the side there. So as they're coming out from the beads, they're just going under the cord. So what we need to do now is add the next row of beads, and I'm going to be doing the exact same pattern here. You can obviously keep doing with whatever pattern and whatever beads that you're doing. So I'm just taking one of my dark ones, two of the rose gold in the middle, and then one of the dark ones after. So I have my 4 beads on either needle, it doesn't matter, and then put them down the thread a bit, and then I keep hold of them there. Then now we need to take the needle from the other side of the thread and go through the same beads but in the opposite direction to what we just did. Make sure to catch all the beads here, like that, and come out to the opposite side with that. And then you have both your threads going through those beads, you can see there, but in opposite directions. And what we can then do is just grab each thread from each side and pull it down, and they're going to then sit nicely right there below the first row that we did and perfectly nestle up underneath it. And then we just need to reposition my needle. So I take the one from the right side, back through the middle of it, and then underneath the leather, back out towards the same side, so towards the right. And this is just a reposition. And the left one, do the exact same thing. So I'm going to be doing this every time, because then what I want to do is move on for the next one, because this is then the technique of adding in the beads. The first time we just added the beads and then went through them a few times, but now what I just showed you is how we're going to be adding them the rest of the way for each row, because then now by going underneath the leather cords back out again, we're already in the position to add the next row again. So that just means I take my next row of beads, whatever kind, size and shape and pattern that is, pull it down the thread, have a little knot there, and then take the needle from the other side and go through the same beads in the opposite direction again. So the exact same thing that I just showed you. So it's really nice and easy and repetitive from now on when adding in the beads here. We're just adding them row by row like this, and they're going to naturally nestle up right underneath the previous row. And again, remember, reposition the threads to come underneath the leather cord and back out to the same side, and the same thing with the other side as well. So just like that. And then obviously as you go as well, just make sure that as you're moving on to the next row, just pull the current row or the previous row nice and tight, so it's going to continue to be tight in the previous rows, and you don't want to ideally then look back and see there's a bit of loose thread somewhere. So make sure you pull it tight along the way and then build this. And it's really up to you how much you want to do. I'm going to be making the knot a section of beads, a knot section of beads, and do that throughout. But you can really decide how long you want each section of beads to be. That's completely up to you, how much spacing you want between the knots. And then obviously just do this for however long you want to. And then all you got to do is, when you're happy with the section of beads you've then done, then either you can then choose to finish off your thread in that section, the same way as I'm going to show you later how to finish it off at the end, or you can just keep using the same thread but just weave it through the knot. It's going to be pretty invisible, especially if you use the same colour of thread or similar as you do as a cord there, like I'm doing here. So that's completely up to you whether you want to finish it off in each section or weave it through the knots. But then make the next knot here with the leather cord. So all you do with that, when you're happy with the amount of beads you've done, you unattach the cords, the leather cords, make the knot the exact same way that I showed you up there. Then once you've made it, tighten it up to sit right underneath the last row of beads that you did. And then that way is how you build it up. So it's really very customizable as well, depending on the look that you want, obviously. And then do that for however long you want it to be. So I now made a longer section here. You can see I have several knots and then several sections of beads in between the knots there. So I just got to a point where I'm due to make another knot, and I just wanted to show you the process of how I do that, because what I'm doing here is also keeping my thread, using the same thread throughout, so I'm weaving it in through the knot. So first of all here, when I'm finishing off this section of beads to get ready to make the knot, the last row that I'm doing here I want to go through twice as well as the first one when I started off. So instead of just going through the one row with my needles there and pulling it tight and then go to the next row, I'm going to go back through the same row on the last one, just so it all stays in place, because when we're then taking these cords free, obviously the little ones that we're going to make the knot with, they're going to be moving around a lot, and it's going to make sure the beads stay in place much more securely as we're moving them around. So I'm releasing these leather cords then and get ready to make the next knot. So I'm starting out making the knot in the exact same way as all the other times. So I take one side first, and I've just started with the same side every time I make a new knot. And I make a loop with that, making sure the tail goes under. And then just to show you the technique basically that we're doing, the other side we're also just making a loop with that. It's going to lay like this. You kind of see the shape of them there. But the only things we have to make sure, the second loop, we have to intertwine that in between so it becomes a fastened knot. So lay that over the top of the first loop, and then we need to take it under the first tail, so underneath that one, and then back over the top of the next piece of cord. Then I'm in between the two straight pieces, and then we need to go underneath the top part of the loop, the first loop, and then come up in the middle of it. Just need to get the tip up there and just get that back in place. And then I'm coming up before the cord that goes straight over the top, and then down on the other side, down through the same loop again. And you can see that's how we make the knot. So just to show you again there. And then you want to tighten this up just pretty much the same way as we did with the first one. Obviously you just got to bear in mind that we need it to sit in a specific place now, and we also want it to not conflict too much with the beads or anything. So what I like to do is basically start with the section of the cord there that's coming straight from where that beaded section is. I kind of hold on to that, and then I push the knot, or this part of the knot, further up, and then I can tighten this that's more loose now with the tail that's coming out on that side. Same thing on the other side. Keep hold of the cord on the bottom there, push that side upwards, and you can see that's looser, and then I pull on this tail on that side as well, and then gradually just tightening it more and more. And you just keep doing this until you're then happy with how it looks and sits, because I just want to make sure it's pretty nice and tight up against the bottom of the beads there. Obviously not so tight that you kind of buckle the beads up together, but just make sure you keep that nice distance with the beads as well and get it tighter and tighter. And I just prefer to then try and make sure that I make my knots as even as possible, so about the same tightness as well. So just find the tightness that you are happy with, and then work towards that with each knot to keep it nice and consistent. So tighten it up a bit more here, and then on the other side, so it looks a bit like that, and that's pretty much there. Maybe we could just tighten it a little bit more. But I'm pretty happy with the positioning as well. And make sure that your beads here, they're lying flat still, kind of over and under each other, or next to each other, just so you haven't risked when you push this knot upwards underneath the beads, you're kind of buckling them up a bit on top of each other. Just make sure they're still lying all nice and flat, and then it looks a little something like that, and that's pretty similar to the other ones, I think. So I'm happy with that. So now, that's the knot done, so we need to then move on. I'm just going to reattach my cords here on the bottom, and then obviously get underneath the knot with the threads so we can then add in the next section of beads. And this is where I also just wanted to show you, because I'm using the same thread throughout instead of starting a new one every time, I wanted to show you how I just weave it through the knot. So I'm just going to take my right one first of all, and you just basically want to follow the path that your cord is going that's making the knot. So on this side I have the cord that's coming from the side of the beads is going over first. So I want to follow that, so I'm going to have a little tiny gap here where I have a cord kind of rounding on the outside. I want to go on the inside of that. So just a little tiny opening. You want to put your needle straight through that, so it's not through the cord, obviously it's leather cord so you can't really get through it that way, but it's through the tiny little gaps in between the crossing over and under each other. Just pull it through there. Follow the path to make it nice and seamless. So I'm going through there and you can't even see the thread now. So now I'm going to just flip it to the back, because I want to come back up again, and I'm just going to step down to the next gap. So that's right down there. So on the front it'll be coming up just below where we went down actually. And again it's just following the path the cord is already making. So pull it through just like that. And now the cord that I'm following here is the one coming from the side. It's going out towards the opposite side. So that means I need to go down between the two cords here on the bottom and out to the opposite side underneath the left cord to follow it. Like that. And that's basically one done. So that's the one from the right side I've now also brought over to the left. That's just how it works out. Now then the one from the left side that we still haven't gone through the knot yet, I need to flip that to the back straight away because this is the opposite basically. So on this I want to go through the same gap as before but on the other side. In this case it's on the back of the knot. So same principle. On this side, just need to find the gap there. We're following the cord when we flipped it over that's going over the top of the loop as well. Get through that gap, pull the thread all the way through, and then following the cord from the side, it goes over now, and we just need to go down through the next gap, bring it around to the back again, and that blends in and follows that cord. And now all I want to do is bring it underneath here to the opposite side, because that's where the cord is going next in the knot, and then it comes straight out to the opposite side there. So now we basically have the threads in place. You can see they're coming out to each their own side, and that's how we want to start out when adding in the next beads. And that's where it's also really useful using a similar colour of thread as you do with the cord, just to make it blend in. Obviously you can use an opposite colour if you want to make it stand out. It's completely up to you, but it really does help. So now it's just adding the beads again, because the threads are naturally coming underneath the cords as they need to. So I just need to add my next row of beads here in the pattern that I want them. Just get them out. So I just pick up my beads in the exact same way. To start off the next section here, bring it down, my thread, then take my needle from the other side and go through the beads in the opposite direction. And pull it all the way out. And then as I tighten this down, the beads are going to end up sitting right perfectly there in the middle, now underneath the knot that we just made. So it looks like that. And you just continue here, obviously. We've got to remember to bring the needles out to the side, underneath the cord, to get them into the right position for the next row. Same thing with the other side. Just like that. And then you can see we're basically back, we're just adding the beads in the exact same way. And again, you can just do whatever you want to. So that's how I then make the knots throughout, but then also how I bring my thread with me into weaving it through the knot and making it really seamless. You just follow the path there. So like I said, just keep doing this until you reach the length that you need. So now that I reached the end here, where I've made my last section of beads, I'm going to finish off with the beads, and this is where I'm going to then finish off my thread. So I'm going to just take one at a time. I'm just going to take my left one here. I have my thread coming out underneath my leather cord from the beads, the last ones that I went through. And again, with this being the last row, I just went through it twice. And then I'm going to start tying this off in some knots and then weaving back through just to make it nice and secure so we can then finish it off fully. So what I'm going to do is go down through the leather again, out to the same side it's coming from, underneath, so it creates this kind of loop around the leather cord. And then I'm going to go back through this loop, and I'm going to go through it twice and then pull the needle through that. And then I'm going to pull it tight here, and then basically that is forming a knot around the leather cord. So just like that. I also do the same on the other side, and then once I've made that knot here, I'm going to go through the beads again. So that last row, just go through them once more. Just get through from the side here, through the whole row. And then you might just sometimes have to move the cord of the beads a little bit, because technically the cord, leather cord on the sides of the beads is actually kind of blocking the holes on the ends. You might just have to push the beads a little bit. Get out to the other side and get it through. There we go. Pull that through, and that's the first knot. Again, like I said, do the same thing on the other side with this thread from that side. Make a knot go through the same row of beads, and then now the threads are basically swapped places again, so swap sides. And then once you've done that, you've done one knot on each side. Now I recommend doing more than that, because one knot here at the end and then finishing off the thread isn't quite enough. It's going to most likely come undone and come apart. So then take each side again, one side at a time, do another knot with each thread, go through the next row up, so we're basically stepping backwards a little bit here, and do that a few times. You can do this whole section if you want to, just to make it as nice and secure as possible. You can also choose to add just a little bit of glue on the last couple of knots if you want to. Obviously a glue that dries clear ideally, so you can't see it. And that adds a bit extra security, and then you can cut off the excess by weaving just through the last row and then cut off the rest of the thread. And that's how you get rid of your thread here, nice and securely without worrying about it. Really should be able to come undone over time. So do that with the thread, and obviously on the other end we still have that section there where it's just a knot, but I want to finish that same way as we just down here with a section of beads just to make it nice and even. So all you do is just turn your board or whatever you're working on around your bracelet here, and then start off a new thread, and that doesn't have to be very long, and then just add that little section of beads here and finish that thread off in the exact same way. I just prefer to start after a knot here when I started out in the first place. So just do that end the exact same way, and then all we have to do is finish off the piece itself. So I now have my full piece here, and all I have to do is finish off the ends using the ribbon ends. So I'm just going to show you that. So first all I need to do is just get rid of the excess length of the leather cord, because obviously this is a bit too much to fit inside, quite a bit too much. So what I'm going to do is cut them down so the length that you have is just about enough to fit inside of that ribbon end. You can kind of measure against it, and then just cut off the excess like that. And then I'm going to take a bit of glue here, so I'm just using my E6000 because it's nice and strong and also dries clear, and I'm just going to be applying it with a toothpick. Just add a little bit, doesn't have to be too much at all. And this is just going to go inside of the ribbon end, just up and down the sides, making sure to cover all of it. So something like that. And then we need to place this onto the end that we cut down. It's going to sit like that right on there. Make sure to catch those ends of the leather with the ribbon end, because that's obviously what's going to hold it there. We're attaching it onto the very end of the leather. Then I'm going to take some flat nose pliers and make sure the ends are inside of the ribbon end, and I'm going to start clamping it down. So just gently, do a bit at a time, making sure it stays in the middle and the ends of your cord stays inside and doesn't come out the side there. And then when you feel pretty happy with how it's going to be, all the way around, then you can just give it one final squeeze to make it nice and tight. Just like that. And again, also then the glue is going to help be an extra security and last long. So there we go. That's the end finished off pretty much. Obviously you're going to do the same thing with the other end. So we have a nice professional finish there. Like I said, you can also easily use a button and loop closure. It's completely up to you. But then we use that loop in the ribbon end to attach our findings. So here's then the finished bracelet after finishing off both ends and attaching my clasp as well. And then it looks like that. So you can really see the look it gives with those knots in between the beads there. And also, like I said, you can use whatever materials you want to and it'll give completely different looks. This is kind of just showing the technique. You can really customize it to how you want it to be. So it's also pretty nice and easy, but a bit of a different kind of wrap bracelet. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching.